I just have one question for the fans who wanted Alina to end up with the Darkling. Are you okay? So today I'm reviewing Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Shadow and Bone is a Russian-inspired young adult fantasy romance. I'm not going to give you the full synopsis, but basically what it's about is our protagonist, who we see through the eyes of in first person, is Alina Starkov. She lives in Ravka. Feels like a fantasy version of Russia. And there's a giant shadow cutting her country in half, like it's blocking and stopping trade between the East and the West. And Alina, very early on in the story, finds out that she is what is called a sun summoner, and she will hopefully have the ability to destroy the Shadow Fold, which is the big shadow dividing the country, with her sun powers. So she goes from a cartographer in the army to being possibly the savior of her country. You would think saving the world or saving her country should be the primary focus of the story, and it kind of is. A lot of what the story is about and a lot of where the emotion from the story comes from is actually from a love triangle between her and her childhood best friend Mal, who just seems like the best guy, and then this other guy known as the Darkling. The Darkling is the cool, edgy character. He looks like he broods a lot and stands on top of castles and stares into the fog, or stands on top of a cliff and stares into the fog. He just looks like he stares into the fog a lot. I don't know, he dresses in all black. His power is he summons shadows. Don't get me wrong, I like cool, edgy characters, but if you read this start to finish, it seems like it's very clear who she should be with. Like, there's the good guy, and then there's a person known as the Darkling. It's like if in Lord of the Rings there was the love triangle where somebody had to choose between Sam the man, and Saruman. It's like, on one hand you have Sam, who is, dependable, loyal, he'll be there for you, and he's just a good guy, and you've likely known him a long time. And he's just like a friendly, happy dude. And then you have Saruman, who's an ancient evil wizard. And Leigh Bardugo took that and was like, yeah, but what if he's hot? And that's it. That's it. What if Saruman was hot? That's the Darkling. And for some reason, a lot of people are like, yeah, he's the one. He's the choice. And I mean, sure, I guess. If you're somebody who likes to root for edgy, very flawed characters, then you're in the right place. Because I read a lot of grimdark, and that's fine. I get that. But just, if you're thinking about romantic partners, it seems like there's one obvious choice. People are born with magic in Shadow and Bone, which kind of gives off X-Men vibes. They have the same tension between magic users and regular people. The people who are born with magic are called Grisha, and they form up a large part of what's called the Second Army, and the humans who don't have magic are in the First Army. And the Darkling leads the Grisha as, the most powerful magic user, and then the king rules over the regular people. And this magic system is actually really interesting. It's broken up into basically 3 different sections. You have the Corporal Key. I'm not going to say any of these right. You have the Corporal Key, who can manipulate the human body, so they're basically like healers or heart renders, which means they can just grab your heart with their mind and stop it or crush it. And then there's the Ethereal Key, who are the summoners. They can basically do elemental magic. They can manipulate the elements. They can do water bending and fire bending and shadow and sun bending and all of that fun stuff. And then there's the Material Key, who are the fabricators and the chemists, and they can manipulate like wood, metal, chemicals, things like that. I think magic plays a big part in this story. It helps you with the escapism, right? To feel like you're lost in another world. It pulls you in that much deeper. Now, since this is a first-person story, it's really important to have an interesting POV character, Alina Starkov. That is our protagonist, and she's kind of mediocre. I'm just saying, like, this is a young adult. Some 30-year-old dude is not the target audience here. But man, she's so insecure and complains and is so clueless at first. Like, let me explain. Mal could literally be like, Alina, I love you. You're my true north. You're my moon and stars. You're the only one for me. And then she'll have an internal dialogue where she's like, Mal's always joking with me. He'll never look at me the way he does those other girls. And it's just like, what? What do you mean? He's clearly interested in you. She does that a lot in the first half of the story, but it gets better. And you could tell, like, that's where her arc is starting. And there's 3 books in the series. So by the end of her arc, I'm assuming, you know, she'll be the strong, confident person. She has a good heart, she's a good person, and she's trying to do the right thing. So you can still root for her, even if the insecurities really jump out at first. Let's talk a little bit about the writing style. I believe this was Leigh Bardugo's first book, and I hear they only get better from here, which is typically the case for any writer, right? Their debut novel comes out and then they get better and better at their craft. In this book, it's a little over 300 pages, and I want to say it's a very description-heavy book, yet it has a pretty fast pace. And I think Leigh Bardugo pulls this off because even though everything is so well described, like every little detail feels like she's painted that picture, but enough interesting things and important events are happening chapter by chapter. So it's like the story is moving at a fast pace. I'm gonna read you a quote completely out of context, so it's not like a major spoiler or anything, but just so you can get a taste of her writing style, just a little bit of the prose. I had barely unlocked the door when it flew open and a tall girl pushed past me, surveying the room and then me with a critical eye. She was easily the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. Her wavy hair was deepest auburn, her irises large and golden. Her skin was so smooth and flawless that she looked as if her perfect cheekbones had been carved from marble. She wore a cream-colored kefka, embroidered in gold and lined in reddish fox fur. And that's, you know, just somebody walking in a room. And the details are there. I think, again, that goes with the escapism, which is probably the greatest strength of this book. If you just want to escape into a fairy tale or a fantasy land, this is a great book for that. Now, as far as ranking goes, I would put this in the B tier of fantasy. It's basically an edgy fairy tale. The protagonist is kind of mediocre, but she has a good heart, and you want to root for her, and the setting and the magic and the Darkling all make the escapism feel strong enough to enjoy this. And honestly, just any scene with the Darkling is exciting, because he's just a cool character to read about. I heard a lot of people don't really like Shadow and Bone, and they just prefer to skip to Six of Crows because it's more exciting. But I think I enjoyed this enough to push through the rest of like Siege and Storm and Rune and Rising, whatever the names of the next two books are. I feel like I've enjoyed this enough to actually push through and read those, so I will. And I have plenty of time now before the next season. If you've read this already, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you haven't, then I'll post a link where you can find this book and purchase it. It is an affiliate link, so if you do click on it, I receive a small commission at no additional charge to you. It's just one way to help support the channel if you're into that. And yeah, so until next time, later.